Is a Christian really moral if the only reason they treat people well is because they want to avoid hell or get into heaven?
There's a meme in play right now that basically says true morality is a morality that is not motivated by the enticement of a reward or the threat of a punishment. If you're doing something because there's a reward involved, or you're not doing something because you fear punishment, well, that's really not morality.
To be more specific, I would say that doing something to get a reward or avoid a punishment reflects what you really value. If your primary motivation to treat people well is that you want to get a reward for doing so, then you're not really valuing the people, you're valuing the reward. If you accept Jesus as your savior just because you don't want to go to hell, you don't really love Jesus, you just don't want to go to hell.
No. You know where this is going, or you know the purpose of this, and that is to demonstrate in some way that Christianity is really shallow when it comes to morality. Because after all, people who do good go to heaven, people who do bad go to hell. That's a mischaracterization, but let's just deal with that for the moment. We'll just accept that for the moment. And so it's meant to show how shallow is that? That's not real morality. Okay, so let me make a couple of observations. Pretty much as far as I know, every religious system that has God in the picture has that kind of system. That is reward for good, punishment for bad. That's the first thing. So if that is shallow morality, the only way to get rid of that shallowness is to get rid of God. But the minute you get rid of God, you have gotten rid of morality.
Buddhists don't have a god in their religious system, but they do still have a concept of karma, which is a kind of cosmic moral system. You can believe that behavior has consequences without believing that those consequences are imposed by a god.
You cannot be a good moral law keeper for the right reasons, for the right motivations, if there are no transcendent moral laws to keep.
Again, Buddhists clearly don't agree that there needs to be a god in order for there to be a transcendent morality. Secondly, you can still be a good moral law keeper if there are contingent, non-transcendent laws.
And by the way, don't go to evolution here. This is just not going to work. If evolution explains our moral impulses, then this whole objection doesn't even apply, because all it does is explain why we believe in a morality that does not exist. We are tricked by evolution to do certain things we call moral that aren't moral to get our genes into the next generation. So this whole discussion about exalted motivations for being moral wouldn't even apply. That's not even in the picture. If God doesn't exist, there is no transcendent morality, and if there's no transcendent morality, there is no moral virtue of any kind, regardless of how you think your actions are motivated.
Sure there is. Even if there is no transcendent morality, there are still non-transcendent moralities, and within the context of those, there are non-transcendent virtues. In fact, this whole objection is most relevant with regard to such moralities. The reason why it's kind of sketchy if a person is only moral because they want a reward or fear a punishment is because if a person's moral behavior is contingent upon a system which administers those rewards or punishments, they will cease to behave in a moral way if that system fails.
Both Jesus and Aristotle before him talked about morality in the sense that morality is a thing that you ought to do for its own sense, for its own good, for its own value, okay? Not for some other kind of external reward. So there's some truth to this, but notice even in this case there's a reward. You live the moral life so you can have the satisfaction of being virtuous.
I don't see that as seeking a reward, though. To be satisfied with being virtuous is to value virtue for its own sake. It's not a consequence of valuing virtue, it is valuing virtue. I don't know if you've heard, but I do have a Patreon.